Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and I'd like to welcome you to my tutorial demo on Chapter 12 from the Murach MySQL book, second edition. And Chapter 12 is entitled How to Create Views. Um, what I'm doing for my tutorial demos today is I'm going through the exercises that are in the book at the end of the chapter. You'll recall that you're working on a companion set of exercises that I distributed separately, the My Guitar Shop exercises. So the ones at the end of each of the chapters are a pretty good way to practice, and we have a copy of the solutions. So I'm going to go through each of the exercises, review the solution, and in most cases provide uh, uh, an improvement or two in the solution that is provided with the book. Um, so let's get started. Fire up a copy of MySQL Workbench. Start a connection. Okay. It's always best practice when you're working with these kinds of exercises to reset the database before a session. Okay? We have a lot of situations when we're going over solutions to the exercises in class, in a kind of online office hours or a discussion session where not everybody started with the same state of the database. So, we say, well, how many rows did you get for that? Well, I got 9. Well, I got 7. Well, I got 11. Well, some people have some updates in, some people don't. So I find it's really a best practice to reset the database. So I'm going to go and find the DB setup scripts, and I'm going to rerun create databases, which is going to recreate APEX and OM. Okay, and we're going to be working with AP. All right, so that's the first thing I do. So let's look at the text for exercise 1. Create a view named Open Items that shows the invoices that haven't been paid. Again, remember this is accounts payable, so these are invoices that we pay to our vendors. This view should return 4 columns from the vendors and invoices tables: vendor name, invoice number, invoice total, and then balance due, and then they give us the formula for balance due. Invoice total minus payment total minus credit total. A row should only be returned when the balance due is greater than 0. And the row should be in sequence by vendor name. Okay, that sounds good. Let's open the solution of this one. Chapter 12, number 1. Okay. And I like what we see, but I just want to point out that there's no use statement at the beginning of the script. So if we just run this, it fails. Okay? That's why I've been teaching in the class that your script should begin with a use. So use AP. Okay? Create or replace view open items. Makes sense. So as, and then we have the select that creates the view. Vendor name, invoice number, invoice total. Those make sense. Then we have the formula for balance due as balance due. From vendors, join invoices on vendor ID, where essentially balance due greater than 0. Ordered by vendor name. Okay, sounds good. Let's give it a run. That was successful. let's go down and take a look at the AP database. Okay. I've got my tables fetching problem again. I hate that. Okay, now I have found a way around this problem, and it's this. Close Workbench. Open it again. Refresh the schemas again. And we can get at the tables. So there's the tables. Here are the views. We have a view open items. So let's look at all the data in open items. And here we go. Okay. So those are the open items that are in the database. Sort of a handy view to have. All right. That worked well. Now, exercise number 2 has us write a select that uses that view. Write a select statement that returns all the columns in open items that we just created in exercise 1 with one row for each invoice that has a balance due of $1,000 or more. Okay, so we just want to be more restrictive. Okay. Now let's peek ahead. How many do we have that are $1,000 or more? Well, I see 2 at the end here from Malloy that are well over $1,000. One's 10 grand, one's almost 20 grand. Everything else seems to be under. So I'm expecting 2 rows. So let's open 12.2. And it has no use statement. Now, that's not a problem when you're running a sequence of these, but I consider it bad form. So let's just begin with use AP. Select all columns from open items where balance due greater than or equal than to 1,000. Okay, let's run this. And there we go. We get the 2 rows that we were expecting to get. Very nice. Okay. Those look like they're probably printing bills. Okay. So 1 and 2 work fine. Let's look at number 3. We're creating a view again. Create a view named Open Item Summary that returns one summary row for each vendor that has invoices that haven't been paid. Each row should include vendor name, open item count, the number of invoices with a balance due, and open item total, the total of the balance due amounts. The rows should be sorted by the open item totals in descending sequence. Okay, so that's a view. Okay, well, let's look at what they're proposing to do this with. Oh, right. Now, I just want to point out that given that we already had a view that listed open items, and now we have an open item summary, okay? It's possible to make a view from a view. Is it efficient to make a view from a view? Well, probably depends on the implementation, okay? Every time we create a view and we use it, so every time we use a view, the query is run, okay? So if we create a view that uses another view, well, every time we use the second level view, it runs the second level query, and then the first, and then to create that, it runs the first level query. So we're running 3 queries to get a query done. Okay, so what we have here doesn't begin with the view, but it could have. Okay, this is probably a more efficient way to do it. So create or replace view, open item summary as, now here's our select vendor name, account of the rows as open item count, sum of invoice total minus credit total minus payment total. So that's the sum of the balance due as open item total. Vendors join invoices on vendor ID, where invoice total minus credit total minus payment total greater than 0. So these are open. We owe something on them. Group by vendor name. Order by open item total descending. Well, let's look at that. Now, I just want to point out that it doesn't begin with use AP, and it should. Okay? And then let's give it a run. So it ran okay. So let's do a refresh on the schema. We can see that in views over here, open items summary has shown up. Let's take a look at the data view on that. And here it is, and it's making sense. Malloy Lithography or Lithographing Inc. Had 2 open items, and they total about 30 grand. Okay, most other people have one except for FedEx, which has 4 open items for about $211, and that makes sense in terms of that. So those are pretty sensible answers. Okay. So, I'm happy. All right. The only thing we did to improve that one, just to review, is we began with a use AP. That's the polite thing to do. All right. And that brings us to exercise 4. Write a select statement that returns just the first 5 rows from the open items summary view that you created in exercise 3. Okay. Let's look at that. So it's open 4. Oh, no, use AP again. Use AP. Select all the columns from open items summary limit 5. Okay, do we have to give it a sort order? Well, no, because the underlying view has an order by. And that's the order by that we want. Okay, so let's give this a run. And what did we get? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. That's what we wanted. Okay, and it's in descending order of an open item, a total, and that's an order that it got from the query that created the view. Well, great. That's just what we wanted. Okay, so things are going pretty well here. Okay, that brings us to number 5. Create an updatable view named vendor address that returns the vendor ID column and all of the address columns for each vendor. Okay. Now, why are we doing this? Well, a couple reasons. One is we want to sort of explore a use case for views where they're convenient. They just have a convenient subset of the data. Okay? And 2, this is the first time we're going to try to update the rows that underlie a view. Okay, so let's open number 5. And my old bugaboo should begin with use AP. Okay. Create or replace view vendor address, vendor ID, vendor address 1, vendor address 2, vendor city, vendor state, vendor zip code, okay, from vendors. So it just has address stuff. So this is a convenient view when we just want to deal with the address. Okay, let's see how we create this. All right, that looks good. Now let's refresh our schemas. And we can see that we now have a third view, vendor addresses. And let's take a look at the data that's in there. Okay. So it's good. Vendor address 1, vendor address 2, city, state, and zip code. So we're seeing it all there. That's fine. And we have all the rows, all 122 rows in the vendor table. I think that makes sense. Okay. And I just want to point out that here we have an address that on vendor 4 is maybe not ideal, okay? Because typically when we would write out a vendor address, if we had a street address and then we had a suite address, we would put the street address in line 1 and the suite address the street address in address 1 and the suite address in address 2, so that we get on separate lines. And somebody put this data in a way that it's all on the address 1 line. So that's not what we want. So in exercise 6, we want to correct that. So we want to write an update statement that changes the address for the row with a vendor ID of 4. That's the one that we're looking at there. So that the suite number, suite 260, is stored in vendor address 2 instead of vendor address 1. So what we want to do is we want to do the updates that will separate out the two parts of this address into a proper value for address 1 and address 2. All right. Let's give it a look-see. Number 6. All right. So I'm happy with this, except use AP. Okay. So we're going to update vendor address. That's the name of our view. Set vendor address 1 equal to the first half. Vendor address 2 equal to the second half, where vendor ID equal 4. Okay? So this is a pretty straightforward update, but we're doing it against the view. Okay? So for this to work, we have to have followed all the rules in defining the view such that it qualifies as being properly updatable, and forming the update. And in this case we have. So let's give it a run. And that worked. Okay, 1 row's affected. All right, and then let's go back to vendor address. And you can see this is the state before we ran the update, and we've got that combined address for vendor ID 4. Let's rerun the query, and you can see that we've successfully split it between the two. Everything's worked fine. So I'm hoping these will serve as a proper inspiration for your work on the My Guitar Shop exercises for Chapter 12. And I'm going to leave you to it and say bye until next time. Bye-bye.